Gangsters, intrigue, and fashionable suits? Let's talk the outfit. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Pass, and today I'm talking to you about The Outfit, which is coming to theaters on March 18th, 2022. It is written and directed by Graham Moore, the Academy... So it's co-written by Graham Moore, who's the Academy Award-winning writer of The Imitation Game, and it's also his directorial debut. So this is his first time directing a movie, and it's really good. My hot take is, I think you should see it. It's a wonderful, understated movie that has a great sense of style and plenty of intrigue throughout. The film is a kind of an espionage kind of thriller set in this tailor shop, and so you have a lot of guessing on what's going to happen next, who is going to double cross who. And overall, it's just a really interesting film and an interesting story. So my hot take is I definitely think you should watch it. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this. I will keep the spoilers to the ending part. So if you just want to know my thoughts, if you want to know more about the film, you can keep listening, and then I'll give you a pretty clear hint when the spoilers are going to happen. So The Outfit, you have Leonard, who's kind of a mild-mannered tailor in Chicago. He's this master craftsman. He trained under London and came to Chicago with just his shears. And from there, built up this high-class tailor shop that also acts as kind of a drop spot for the mob. You know, he's very mild-mannered. He doesn't want any trouble. So the mob comes in and leaves notes and messages in his shop to kind of have this cover of... To have this like safe, secure place to drop things. And the only other person in the shop regularly is his assistant, Zoey Deutch, who runs kind of the day-to-day in the shop, but she also is trying to learn the trade as well. And so, but one day the son of the boss comes in with a problem. And the rest of the movie is them trying to figure out how to fix this problem, how to get out of trouble, and how to kind of escape with what they can, because this is a pretty dangerous situation that they find themselves thrust in. So things I liked about this movie. So the first thing I really liked is the writing. You get some very interesting dialogue and some careful choices on what is said and what is not. As in any good like espionage kind of spy thriller, you always kind of have to question what people are saying, and the writing here does help that. It kind of paints some shadows of doubt in certain people and also slowly drops hints about the overall story and the backstory of a lot of the characters. So you really do find out a lot throughout this night, and the writing helps contribute to that. You really kind of are drawn in to what these characters are saying, and that's important because the film is basically taking place in this tailor shop. So a lot of what happens is, you know, the words and what they are saying and the performances. And I'm going to get to the performances in a second, which is the second thing I liked. I love the performances. I thought that this film had some really great performances. You only had about 7 actors with speaking roles, but each of them is kind of perfectly cast and does it wonderfully. I think Mark Rylance as the cutter, he calls himself a cutter because a tailor just sews, he kind of cuts and makes suits. He does a fantastic job. Like, he definitely looks the part, feels like this kind of master craftsman who has trained for years, is kind of fully in control of, you know, this craft, and also is very calm in some very tense situations. But you know, everyone does a really great job. Zoey Deutch as the assistant is really good because she always has kind of some dreams that are bigger than her situation, and so she, you know, that comes out as well, and she definitely plays that part very well. I really like Johnny Flynn as Francis. He's kind of a bad guy in this film, and you know, I didn't expect that from Johnny Flynn. I thought that was an interesting take, and you know, he does a really good job. Actually, I mean, everyone does a really good job. The performances are very few, but they are all very well done. They all contribute to the overall feel in this film. Actually, the film really does feel like a play at times, because you have, you know, a limited area. You've got the tailor shop, and you've got this really great dialogue that kind of flows naturally and gives you hints about what's going to happen and involves this story in this very limited setting. So I really appreciate that. I kind of thought this might have been a play, but no, it's an original story. But I thought this could actually be a really great play as well, if they want to branch out and put this on, you know, I don't know, Broadway or off Broadway. I'm not sure where it would go. But the third thing I really liked is the intrigue. There is this overall mystery in this film that people are trying to figure out, and little tidbits are dropped here and there that let you kind of suspect who is involved in this overall plot. And I got into that in the performances, but so the intrigue builds throughout, and there's a lot of twists and turns. Like, oftentimes you'll suspect someone, and then you'll think it's someone else, and then eventually you find out, you know, who is behind this overall plot. Unless you're my wife. My wife figured it out instantly from the start and called it, but I was guessing the entire time. And the last thing I really liked is the music. The music had this lovely kind of like jazz undertone that really did a good job of setting the stage of both the setting and the kind of like espionage spy part of it. You're set in the 50s in Chicago, so the music instantly feels right for the time period. You've got these people in like gangster suits, so it really contributes to the overall setting. But then also, it does feel like the kind of music you would have in some sort of like spy thriller, because it feels like, you know, your old school spy stories of people meeting up for drops and, you know, having drinks and things like that. I think the music does a really good job of contributing to the overall feel in this film. Things I didn't like, and there's only one thing. It's mostly minor, but it is the ending, and that it's not the ending of the ending of the story. It's there's a sequence at the very end that I didn't think fit with the rest of the tone, and so I'm gonna get into that now. As you can imagine, there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers in this part. I'm going to talk about the ending. So if you don't want to know what happened in this film, and you probably don't, like, this film has a lot of really good intrigue, and I really liked kind of hearing the people's stories and how everything built, I would turn this off now and go check out the film when it's in theaters on March 18th. But if you want to know kind of what I thought about the ending, and also I'm going to try to come up with what I thought might have been a different and maybe more fitting ending, then let's keep going. So the overall story revolves around a rat in the Boyle organization. Boyle is kind of the main gangster in Chicago. He kind of controls the neighborhood, and he actually likes Leonard. Like they met early on, and he likes kind of Leonard's old school style. He likes the, you know, the classy things he makes, and he likes how Leonard feels like a cultured person. And so Boyle actually really likes him. And Boyle's son Richie likes the tailor as well, and also really likes his assistant. They are actually dating, and so eventually Richie gets shot. A lot of intrigue happens, but overall, what the main question is who is this rat? There's someone feeding information on the Boyle organization to the FBI and to their enemies, and so they're trying to figure out who it is. And in the end, we find out who it is. We find out it's mostly Mabel. She's dating Richie. She's passing that information along to the FBI and to the LaFontaines, and that's because she wants to get out of here. She wants to get out of this city, and this is kind of her way out. But it's also partly Leonard, because I think Leonard learns what Mabel's doing and tries to help her along. And so he's actually the one who created this tape that everyone is kind of trying to find. This tape is apparently a recording from the rat that will say who the rat is. Like by knowing where this tape was recorded and who was in it, you'll be able to figure out who the rat is. So Leonard did this and kind of moved this along and kind of played the sides off each other to help Mabel, because he knew Mabel wanted to get out of there, get out of the city. You know, those two together, and along with some other players throughout, scheme and kind of put an end to the Boyle organization. LaFontaine ambushes Boyle, takes him out. Richie was killed earlier. So basically, the organization is dead, and LaFontaine comes to pick up the tape. And while, you know, LaFontaine and the henchmen are there, they take out Francis, who is hiding in wait. So everything's fine. Everything is kind of resolved. LaFontaine gives Leonard and Mabel the money for the tape, and they're off on their way. So Leonard then tells Mabel, like, take the money, go live your life, go live your dreams. He knows that she wants to travel. He knows she wants to escape this place. So he told her to take the money and go. She's like, no, come with me. Like, you've seen the world. You can help me. Like, you can tell me where to go. And he's like, no. You don't want me to hamper you, like, in the best years of your life. You don't want to be taking care of me. Go and live your life. I've started over before. The second time, it should be easier. So she goes, thanks him, takes the money, and goes to live her life. So now Leonard is going to torch the shop. So he suits up as he should. He's a very fashionable tailor. He packs up and then starts setting the shop on fire, sets it on fire, and starts to walk out. But as he's walking out, Francis rises up, and this is where I kind of thought this feels like a more of a weird, like, I don't know, actiony thriller than I was expecting. So Francis gets up and has a gun, shoots him. There's only a couple bullets in the gun. He shoots Leonard in the arm, and then they have a struggle. And, you know, Leonard kind of like manages to push Francis down, but Francis pulls out a switchblade, a knife, and like is getting ready to lunge at Leonard. So it seems like Leonard's in trouble, right? Like, Francis is hurt, but he has a knife, and he's kind of a ruthless killer. And Leonard is this mild-mannered tailor. But then Leonard starts telling Francis about his old life. And this is where I thought it again felt kind of weird. He rolls up his sleeves to reveal these tats, you know, on his arms that you didn't see before, because he's always impeccably dressed and his sleeves are always, you know, all the way down. So he reveals these tats, and he says, you know, to Francis, I was once like you. I made a living from the knife and the gun, and sometimes I use my own hands. He continues talking to Francis. He says, one time, you know, my bosses, they asked me to do something I couldn't do. So he says, so I left. I went to the Row, which is the London Row, which is where he kind of picked up tailoring. He learned a skill and met his wife and kids, and he was happy. But eventually, the bosses found where he was. They came back to, I guess, enact their revenge, or somehow the violence caught up to him. So maybe it was either his bosses or the people that he was committing violence against. Someone caught up to him, set his shop on fire, and he escaped with just his shears. But as we find out earlier, his wife and daughter died in the fires. So he had nothing except for his skills and his shears. So he went to Chicago to escape the violence of his life in London, to kind of escape from that life and also escape from himself, like who he was in London. So he came to Chicago, opened up his shop, thought he'd have a fresh start. And wouldn't you know it, who was the first person that went into his shop when he first opened it? But it was the boss, the Boyle boss, came in, took a liking to him, and that violence and that life followed him there. But he didn't actually have to participate in it, but it was still around him. And so he's telling the story, and Francis lunges at him, and so the tailor then pushes him aside, like pushes the knife aside, and stabs Francis in the neck with his shears, with the tailor's shears. And so Francis is bleeding, obviously. And so he gets on the ground, and the tailor gets above him. Sorry, the cutter. He's a cutter. He mentions a couple times he's a cutter, not a tailor. Tailor's just so he cuts and makes suits. So he gets above him with the knife, with the shears, about ready to end it. But he sees that Francis is basically already gone. So he doesn't end it. He puts a coat over his other suit to hide the bullet hole, picks up his stuff, and walks out and starts his new life. And then presumably the shop burns. People don't, probably assume he died in it, and he gets to start anew. So again, it wasn't. I loved the plot up until that point. I loved all the intrigue. I loved the twists and turns. It's just this sequence felt a little strange for a few reasons. One, if he had this life of violence, he would have, I think, been more comfortable earlier on with some of the violence that was happening. But he felt pretty jittery in there, and maybe that was just his act. Maybe he had been this mild mannered tailor for so long he didn't know that life violence. But I feel like if you had that experience growing up, you would still be at least comfortable. You wouldn't be surprised. But the tailor, in many parts, looks like he is in fear, is surprised, is scared of what is going to happen. You also wouldn't expect him, you also would expect him to kind of, I don't know, be a little bit more calm and collected in some of these violent parts. And again, he was fairly calm in some of these instances, but there were some when he felt like he was pretty nervous, especially when he was stitching up Richie after he'd been shot. Like, he was shaking. He did a really good job, so maybe that was part of his act. But again, it felt a little weird to have him be this like old thug. I thought maybe a different way to do this. And look, I'm not an Academy Award-winning writer. This is just my thoughts. So take it with a grain of salt. Let me know what you think. But I thought they could have made it that maybe the tailor, like maybe Leonard's father was the crime boss. His father was the one who did the crime, expected Leonard to take that life up, but he didn't want that. He didn't want that life. He didn't want to be involved in that violence. And so he went to the Row and learned a craft and learned a trade. And then while he was there, he met his wife. He tried to like forsake his father. Maybe his father died or maybe they could say like his father was killed in like some sort of gang war in London, and so he escaped to go to the Row to live out his life, something that would make him go to the Row and forsake his old life. And while he was there, he learned his trade, met his wife, had a daughter. He was happy. But then that violence caught back up to him. Either his father found him and tried to convince him to get back in the business, and he didn't want to, so he had to like end it. Or maybe I think I like the idea of maybe his father was killed. Maybe those people saw him as a threat because he was still, the blood of this, gang lord. And or maybe whoever took over his father's business saw him as a threat, thinking that he might be someone to challenge the power. And so that person then sent thugs to take out Leonard in his shop, and they set fire to the house, and they beat him up or something, or he barely escaped with just his shears, and he had to start over a new life in Chicago away from the violence. I think that would have been maybe a little bit more of a realistic explanation, because he's not the seasoned killer in this movie. He is not kind of this like seasoned street soldier. He has experience. He does say that he served in the war. Maybe that was his false statement. Maybe the war that he said was the war on the streets in London. I think that was actually probably it. But he doesn't come off as someone that has that kind of experience. I think it would have been would have been more believable to me to have him have done that. But again, it's not a big deal. This last action sequence didn't seem to fit. And then when he's trying to like reveal how he used to be a thug and show his tats, it felt like a very different type of movie than before. I think you could have had him explain to it. I think you could have had him explain to Francis as he's, burning the shop. He could have like been talking to him like, you might not know this, but this is my past. I'm sorry this happened to you, Francis, and to Richie. And now it's time for me to start over. Like something like that, I thought would have been more fitting with the character and the general tone of the film. But again, it's just the last little bit. The film is really good throughout, and it's a very kind of enjoyable ride. So I definitely think you should watch it. Let me know what you think about the movie and, you know, my potential other ending. And also check out my interview with Graham Moore. It's up on the YouTube channel. It was a really fun person to talk to, and he gives some insights into where this story came from and why he decided to step behind the lens and direct his first movie. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And please check out my other content, other reviews, interviews, unboxing videos, and recommendations. Thank you.